Hello, and welcome to episode 45 of The Best Games, period. With me this week is your trusty, lovable mojo monkey, your Jeremy Brown.
It me.
Yeah, it's that guy. You can't see, but I'm pointing at him, and he can't see it either, because he's several hundred miles away. But this week we are going to be talking about the one, the only, the PlayStation 2 classic, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. Cheers! Everyone's cheering. The crowd goes wild. Ah. Yeah, so you're the one who nominated this game initially, Jeremy.
Indeed.
So I guess what makes Sly Cooper stand out from the other platformers of the early 2000s?
Well, I didn't play a lot of the other platformers of the early 2000s, with the exception of maybe Ratchet
and Clank. Yep.
Yeah, and neither that series nor this series did I play until well after they had come out. My first time playing Sly Cooper was when the collection came out, actually. So in 2010, I think that was.
Yeah.
I guess it just kind of stood out. I think it's fun. I think it's pretty clever. I think the dialogue and writing are good. I think the voice acting for what it is good. You know, it's kind of cheesy and cliche and all that stuff as well. but you know, it's just a fun little cartoony game, I guess.
Yeah, and the cheesiness can kind of be forgiven because it is kind of aimed towards a younger audience.
Yeah.
It is interesting that last week we were talking about a stealth action game, and this week we're talking about a stealth platforming game.
Indeed.
People might find it odd because last week I slammed the original Dishonored for not being a really good stealth game.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think Sly Cooper is a much better stealth game. Like it's not obviously as complicated or as in-depth as something like Thief.
Yeah.
But I think it stays truer to the main goal of stealth, which is, not being seen and getting through traps and using timing and clever tricks to kind of get out of trouble and danger.
Yeah, it's just, it's more traditional stealth. It's timing and understanding the way the enemies react in the map and whatnot without the crazy magic or special, what special abilities that are needed in say, like Dishonored.
Yeah, exactly. Sly Cooper is kind of the first step into the stealth genre. So you have, well, maybe we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Basically, Sly Cooper is the story of an anthropomorphic fox that is on a quest to get his family's precious thieving book back. I don't even know if it's a magic book, but it's a book that has a bunch of tricks on how to more effectively thieve things.
Yeah, so he comes from a long line of thieves, and the Thievius Raccoonus is basically the family history of the different techniques that they've used throughout the years. And it was stolen.
When he was a child, it was stolen by these 5 miscreants who each have parts of the book.
Yes, 5 fiendish miscreants.
Yes. And so the first game really follows a very basic, classic pattern of each of these evil dudes has their own level. And you sneak through the level and you go through the various things to get past their security systems, and then you face off against them in kind of a boss encounter.
Yeah, pretty much. And then you repeat.
It's not super in-depth on a structural level. It's pretty much the classic thing games have been doing since, like, the dawn of time.
Yeah.
But what kind of makes it work is that the characters are all pretty well defined, if somewhat blaringly obvious.
Yes.
There's not a lot of subtlety in the characterization here. This isn't Uncharted or anything like that. But you mentioned the voice acting. The voice acting is surprisingly good for a game that came out in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I would point out is that, like, even though the voice acting is pretty decent, the writing isn't the greatest, and
yeah,
I don't think to the game's credit, a lot of the cutscenes are in engine, so it's more forgivable, I guess. But the pacing of scenes is very off. I played through the opening hour or so of Sly Cooper, and the back and forth in the dialogue is just very jilted sometimes. Not jilted, that's not the word I wanted to use. Stilted, there we go.
Yeah, and like you said, it's pretty predictable, and it follows the cliches of Bentley, who's the hacker and kind of the nerd, and of course they totally go that route on him, and Murray, who is kind of the big dumb oaf.
Yep.
They
even straight up say he's the baggage.
Yeah.
The group.
Poor Murray. Murray's awesome though.
Yeah. And then you have Sly Cooper, who is clearly modeled after George Clooney. This is one of those games that kind of makes me wonder if it inspired a larger generation of furries. And
it could be.
I say that because the main character is kind of he's kind of supposed to be a more suave version of Sonic. Like, he's kind of the cool, edgy guy, but he's not as obnoxious, usually. And then there's the kind of weird romance between him and the French police detective,
Carmelita Montoya Fox.
Yeah, who is just a fox that has a set of cans for some reason.
Yes, she does. She can.
And I just bring that up because it really struck me as kind of weird. But
yeah, no, it was.
And the game consistently, even after the opening, refers back to the fact that she has a set of cans. So
yeah,
like, that's not me like getting super weird. Like, the game itself points to that.
Yeah.
And I just find that amusing, a little bit off kilter, a little weird. And I think one of the things that bugs me about Sly Cooper is how it seems like Sly is very unaware. Like, he's like, "Oh, you guys stole from me. You're bad guys. But I'm also a thief."
And my entire family is. Yes.
Yeah. Like, my entire family history are people who are doing the exact same thing you are doing, except maybe my family was better at it than you are.
Yeah.
Is that kind of...
Yeah, I mean, maybe not quite as dastardly.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Yeah, they were better at it, so they didn't have to, use traps and things like that. They were just sneakier. Also, in the backstory, it seemed like they indicate that these 5 dastardly characters wiped out his entire family? Am I getting that right? Yeah, at least his parents. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I mean, it gets kind of dark at times.
He seems much more wrapped up with getting the book back than like getting revenge.
Than avenging his
dead family.
Yeah, I want to say one of them like killed his parents in front of him or something. I don't know where I'm getting that from, but
it seems like something that would happen.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the enemies is creating an undead army. So, I mean, really.
Well, who isn't these days? I mean, I got mine going on in the basement.
Wait, what?
What? Wait, what?
We have good fun on this show. Good, not
Indeed.
Undead fun. Ha ha.
Yeah, so it says the night that he was to inherit the book, the Fiendish Five murdered his parents in front of him and stole the book, dividing it into 5 pieces and going their separate ways.
Yeah, that doesn't come, like, it rarely gets even brought up. It's just like...
Yeah, just a quick little thing.
Yeah, and then that's one thing that kind of bugs me. There are a lot of moments in Sly Cooper where I was like, hey, this would be actually really cool to play this sequence. For example, right after you beat the first boss in the game, there's a blurb talking about how Sly Cooper escaped from this flying fortress before the police arrived to arrest the bad guy that he just fought. Why can't we play the escape sequence? That would have been really neat.
Yeah.
But again, I think largely a lot of the first Sly Cooper game was held back by technological limitations.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty early PS2 game, wasn't it? I mean, 2002? When did the PS2
Yeah,
come
I mean,
out?
this is only 4 years after Ocarina of Time, so to put that in perspective for people who might not have played it. I cut it some slack there. However, that isn't a complaint that only I have. Looking back on it, a lot of people at the time complained that the game was very short.
Yeah.
So part of me wonders if they originally planned on making a lot more playable sequences and just had to cut a lot of it due to lack of a budget. Because at the time, Sucker Punch wasn't really well known.
From what I read, they'd only released one game on the Nintendo 64 before Sly Cooper.
Okay.
And that game was called Rocket Robot on Wheels, and I've never heard of it and don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I've never heard of that game either, actually. And now they're known for the Infamous series.
Yes, and soon to be Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. It is kind of shocking to me that they've really only made the Sly Cooper series and the Infamous series. They seem like they'd be a much more prolific developer.
Yeah.
But so far they've just stuck to what they know, and what they know is kind of having fun traversal mechanics and sneaking and superpowers and all that stuff. And more power to them. They're doing a good job.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Infamous series personally. And I enjoy the Sly Cooper series as well, but they're on the surface they look like they're completely different types of games, but when you get down to the gameplay elements, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah. And one of the things I like about Sly Cooper is that it's constantly throwing new things at you. And I think that might also partly be why the game is so short. Almost, it seems like every level is throwing a new element, or like you're getting a new move, or like some kind of new twist in the level design that you haven't seen before. And it's kind of this series of just learning on the go, and the game just slowly builds you up to the point where you're kind of fluidly going through these levels. And I suppose if you didn't try and find the secrets, like throughout each level there are little special things that you can collect that eventually unlock key code, or not a key code, like a tumbler code for a locked safe. And if you open up the safe, you get a new move. Basically, each part of every stage has a new move hidden inside of it, or like a power-up of some kind.
Yeah.
And those things are actually pretty hard to get. Like, you have to be pretty thorough when you're scouring around.
Yeah, you do. Which makes the game last a little longer, I suppose.
Yeah. But it's also just a testament to how much variety they put into the game. Mm-hmm. And I also think it's interesting that I mean, we haven't seen a Sly Cooper game in a long time. Right?
Let's see. The last Sly proper game, I believe, was...
There's Thieves in Time. But I don't think that was made by Sucker Punch.
No, that wasn't Sucker Punch. The last one Sucker Punch made was Sly 3, Honor Among Thieves.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Thieves in Time was 2013. So
yeah, that was okay. I played that game.
Yeah. I didn't play it, but I heard some good things. And I think it's telling that because I'm babbling. Basically, back in the early 2000s and a little bit before that, there were a ton of attempts to establish the cool new animal character mascot.
Yeah.
And we've already talked about one of those attempts on the show, and that was Ratchet and Clank. Another was Jak and Daxter.
And Crash.
And Crash Bandicoot, and Spyro, and a bunch of them.
The gecko thing?
Gex the gecko.
Yes.
But Sly Cooper kind of came out at the tail end of that, and I think it's telling that it's been one of the more successful attempts to do this. Really, I can only think of 3 that were moderately successful, and that's Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, and then Sly Cooper. I kind of put them all together. But
Yeah.
Jak and Daxter kind of fell apart towards the end. People love Jak 2. I don't think a whole lot of people are very fond of Jak 3. And then Ratchet and Clank is still going pretty strong today. It even got its own movie. And Sly Cooper is going to get its own movie next year, apparently.
Yep.
And it had its run on the PlayStation 2 and then came out on PlayStation 3 back in 2013. Since then, it hasn't been a whole lot. There was a pretty big gap between the third Sly Cooper and Thieves in time, but
Oh, yeah.
I think it's still a relatively recognizable name and brand, I guess, in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of held up throughout the years.
I guess, what do you think sets it apart? I have trouble kind of nailing down why that is. Is it...
So what sets it apart from the many other... I mean,
Yeah.
we named a few, but there's a ton of games that were similar to this that released during that 6-7 year period.
Yeah, I mean, like, Spyro the Dragon came out... I mean, it's a precursor to Sly Cooper, but came out, had maybe, like, 1-2 games, and then just completely fell off the face of the earth until Skylanders, and Skylanders isn't even really about Spyro.
No. I never played Spyro, so I really can't comment specifically on that one.
Yeah.
I know playing through Sly 1, 2, and 3, they played really well. Like, the concept was easy to grasp. The controls worked well. I don't remember the camera being too terribly bad. It did have good voice acting, and it changed it up just enough to keep you interested and moving, wanting to get to the next layer, next level, whatever they want to call them. I think, and I think sometimes it's just, could be luck and marketing. Maybe it was marketed better.
Okay.
Maybe people picked up that game as opposed to some of the other ones, and it sold better, so got more sequels, so on and so forth. What do you think?
I mean, I think you're onto something with how it plays. I think it's very fluid. There's a lot of animation work that went into Sly Cooper. A lot of little details that really make it stand out. Like the soundtrack makes little like plucks on strings when you move. It's very cartoonish and inviting, I think, for younger audiences. But it also has kind of a darker edge to it that maybe older audiences can appreciate.
It's almost kind of like watching an old Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah.
The music works with the movements.
Yeah, and it has a little bit of a charm and comedic edge to it. Like, if you fall off into some water, Sly does a little animation like he's aboard a sinking ship or something like that.
Yeah.
And I will say that it's also surprisingly difficult in some
ways.
Yeah,
in some areas.
In some areas. I personally dislike games that have live systems. I just think it kind of detracts from the fun, but again, this game can kind of be forgiven for that because when it was made, it was pretty common to have lives, especially in platformers.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, it's something you don't see much anymore, so that is a little different.
Yeah. But I will say that even if you die in Sly Cooper, it puts you right back into the action really quickly. There's a really handy checkpoint system that's pretty easy to wrap your head around. And it's even if you run out of lives, you just start that area of the stage back over. It's not...
Yeah,
like
it's not like the traditional 3 lives and you have to start the game completely over.
Yeah, like it's very forgiving for how difficult it is. Like again, I replayed the first hour of it, and the boss of the first area, this frog guy, Sir Raleigh.
Is that Sir Raleigh? Yeah.
You fight him, and basically you have to hit him 5 times, which sounds pretty easy, but each time you hit him, he enters a new form of the boss battle and changes things up. And it's frustrating because if you at any point fall off the edge of the stage you're fighting him on, you're instantly dead. There's no forgiveness.
Yeah.
And so that can get really frustrating, but it's a little bit more forgivable because, again, you don't have... It just starts you right back into the fight, even if you run out of all your lives. So...
Yeah, it's kind of pointless to even have them.
Yeah, it's more just frustrating than anything.
Yeah. It's more like, we need to have a life system, so let's do this. But
yeah, all the other games are doing it. Don't you want a live system, Sly Cooper? Just try it. Just try it once.
Yeah. I think live systems were mostly created because of arcades to get people to spend more quarters.
I think you're 100% right. That's just a holdover of the genre from arcades. And it's also why it baffles me that they lasted so long in game design.
Yep.
Yep. The arcades were mostly an 80s, early 90s thing. And the fact that they lasted, that game mechanic lasted until, mid 2000s. I mean, you still see some pop up today, but they're few and far between.
Yeah, it's not common anymore, thankfully.
Yeah. I mean...
Which is funny, because, you mentioned that it was the 80s and 90s, and I would even say 70s, and, every now and then, when my mom is watching me play a video game, she'll say things like, "Did you get the high score? How many lives do you have left?" It's it's not how it works anymore, Mom.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that people just really clicked with and stuck in people's heads, and I think it kind of taps into that primal urge to gamble that humans have.
Yeah, very well could be.
I don't know exactly how, but I think there's some association that some strong association in people's minds with putting in a coin, getting a life.
You're buying a chance, and that's what gambling is. You're paying for a chance. And
that just it's something that's stuck with a lot of people. Even people who aren't gamers kind of have that idea in their head. So it's not surprising that we see it pop up in games even now. But yeah, I think you're on point with that one.
Finally, I got something right.
I do want to ask, what's the deal with his weapon? What?
His cane?
Is it a cane, or is it like a scythe, or what? What is it? I don't think they ever explain that, really.
I guess I just always assumed it was a cane. I mean, it looks kind of like a scythe, but...
Okay.
I mean, I don't know why he needs a cane.
Yeah, I mean, astonishingly comes in very handy.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he uses to, he uses the hook part to navigate, and it's his main weapon, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I just always thought of it as a cane, but I don't know
it's
for sure that it isn't.
It's just very unique. I think the only other time I've seen something like that in a game was probably Dark Souls.
I suppose.
I don't typically see enemies using something, or players using something like that, but...
I mean, Ratchet has his wrench, right? Yeah. That he uses. He can use it for combat, but mostly he uses it to solve puzzles and traverse areas. But that makes sense because he's a mechanic.
Exactly.
I don't know that thieves carry canes, but when I think of thieves, I don't think of canes very often, so I'm not really sure how they relate. But
also, I don't think we ever see Sly Cooper just in normal clothes. Is he really hard to track down? Does he just use that cane and he's walking down the street striding, "Hey ladies, how do you like me and my totally nondescript cane?"
Yes, you like my magic stick? I guess. Maybe it's kind of a throwback to like British high society. Everybody had a cane even if they didn't need one.
Is he British?
Well, I mean, a lot of the settings seem like
they are kind of European.
They're in England. Yeah.
Like I do have to say I really like the opening of Sly Cooper. It's very it is what I would imagine this game to be if I just saw the box.
Yeah.
Basically the opening is just Sly Cooper breaking into a French police office to steal a file, and then he leaves his calling card in the safe and then escapes as a police officer is trying to shoot him with a stun gun. That also blows up cars? ?
Yeah. It can. Yes, it's a non-lethal approach to killing furries, but when it comes to vehicles, it's destructive beyond imagination.
I guess so. And then they escape in a van, and it's, I don't know, it's very exciting and interesting, and I wish I can imagine a game like this being made today, and the thought of that really excites me. Like, I think you could do... What am I trying to say? You could remake Sly Cooper with modern technology, keep it just the way it is, and add more production value to it, and I think it would be a very thrilling experience.
Well, when you replayed it today, did you play the PS2 version?
I played the version that's in the collection.
Yeah, okay. Did you ever play the PS2 version?
I did when it came out, but it was, again, a really long time ago, so I had to refresh myself.
I mean, the collection was a remaster, right? So
yeah.
I can only imagine that it had I guess that doesn't really add to the production value so much.
Yeah, but... I mean, it looked cleaner than I remember it,
yeah.
But I guess what I mean by production value is, like, if you added more NPCs on the screen, if you added more effects, if you added, kind of redid the visuals, because it is made in kind of a cartoony, cell shaded style. It's made to look like a comic book.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of that's one of those techniques that just kind of prevents aging visually.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, I've always found it funny when games like that get the remaster treatment, because they, like, I don't know how to, so, like, the first time I ever got an HD TV, right? Like, a lot of things looked way, way, way better.
Yeah.
But it seems like cartoons always look the same no matter what. If that makes any sense.
No, that does make sense.
So,
I've never thought of it that way, but now that you mention it, it kind of
So yeah, I always found it. I find it funny when cartoony type games get the HD remaster treatment, because I don't know that there's a whole lot of difference as far as the way it visually looks now. I mean, frame rates and things like that can certainly be better.
Yeah, that's one of the things. When Wind Waker was remastered for the Wii U, I think the only thing they really added was a lot more bloom lighting, and and some technical improvements. But other than that, it looked pretty much the same. And maybe that's just me misremembering how the original Wind Waker looked. I'm not entirely sure, but
no, I mean, I think it looked pretty similar.
Yeah.
So. So anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, Sly Cooper, the Thievius Raccoonus.
I've always thought that title was funny.
Yeah, it's funny. For some reason, I've always kind of compared this to Ocean's 11.
Yeah, it's definitely got that feel.
I mean, it just has Sly Cooper has a very George Clooney personality.
When did Ocean's 11 come out? Well, I mean, wasn't Ocean's 11 a remake?
But I think a lot of people associate the new one more associate with the new one. Yeah, the new one came out in 2001, so...
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely. Could have been strongly influenced by that. And, yeah, you can definitely see some Clooney and Sly.
Yeah. And it's very... it also reminds me of Uncharted in a lot of ways, because it does have kind of some action set-piece moments that are pretty engaging and fun. Kind of almost Indiana Jonesy moments where you're going through the traps very carefully.
Yeah.
The Raiders of the Lost Ark opening.
Yeah, no, it definitely does that. I think maybe one of the reasons that you asked this earlier, one of the reasons it stands out is it does a good job of kind of mixing things up, and you're not just sneaking around and whacking things with your cane the whole time. You can go to those areas with the blue sparkles, and it kind of creates a almost contextual based series, but you're not doing that through the entire level. It's just in certain parts of the level, so it breaks it up, so you're not constantly doing one or the other.
Yeah, and then there are levels that just throw curveballs at you. There's one in the first world that has you in a submarine, and you're supposed to shoot crabs in a submarine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a ton of variety that just kind of shakes things up a little bit and keeps it feeling fresh. Without falling into a kind of... I think one of the main threats to platformers like Sly Cooper is when they fall into a rut of collect these things. And you're just running around collecting stuff.
Yeah.
And I think Sly Cooper manages to sidestep that with variety, because on the surface you are still collecting stuff. You're collecting keys to get to the next area, to unlock a thing that gets you to the next area, to open a door, whatever. But eventually it breaks up the monotony of a collectathon with just randomness that's really welcome and interesting, and the background, each of the areas is pretty fun to look at and run through. I don't know.
No, I agree.
Yeah. So if you had to pick out some flaws, what would they be?
Well, it's been a while since I played through it. I think I don't hate it, but the idea of, you get through this, I think that, you go through the five fiendish whatever things. And it's kind of rinse and repeat. Now the scenery changes and whatnot, but ultimately you just do the same things. You go through, you get to the end, you beat the boss, you get to, the stuff you need, the information you need to move on to the next one, you find it. And just, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really have any qualms with this game. What about you? Maybe if you say something, it'll help me remember.
I find, it does kind of fall into a formulaic... The variety keeps it afloat, but I think if this game had been longer, it might have fallen into a little bit of a formulaic pattern that might have been a little bit overstaying its welcome. But it is short, so it manages to avoid that criticism altogether, in favor of a different criticism, which is that it's short. But I think today we're a little bit more forgiving of short games, so
yeah,
I don't mind it all that much that it is short. I do think that gameplay-wise, it's a little bit floaty, and I don't appreciate that. If this game feels like it should be a little faster, a little bit more fluid and less floaty, I guess. Because I think it comes from limiting, or not limiting, but I think it comes from some technical limitations that lock animations into certain distances and stuff like that. And so sometimes when you're trying to make very precise jumps, it's very irritating to overshoot.
Yeah, okay, I do recall that actually.
Yeah, it doesn't have the precision of something like Super Mario.
Yeah.
And normally that's okay, especially when you kind of get used to it and you're in the groove. But it can be pretty frustrating to just constantly miss a couple jumps.
Yeah, I remember there were a couple spots that I really had a hard time with the jumps. I can't specifically tell you which ones, but there were one or two.
Yeah, it happens. Believe me. And I also think while the difficulty is nicely balanced, I think for both newer and younger, I think it could actually benefit from being a little bit easier, or if not easier, giving a little bit more leeway with when it comes to just instant death stuff.
Yeah.
Because if there are little pickups you can get throughout the game that are little lucky shoehorns. And I think you also get them if you collect 100 coins.
Yeah.
But if you don't have one of those, you just instantly die if you get hit with anything. If you do have one of those, the lucky horseshoe pops out of you and you're fine.
Yeah, it's like an instant revival.
Yeah, but it's very... it's hard to tell when you're empowered by one of those until something hits you and you don't die.
True. True.
And B, it's just kind of frustrating. Like, give us a health bar or something, or give us... I don't know. Give us something that's not just instant death from everything, because that's...
Yeah.
I don't enjoy that. Unless it's something like Super Meat Boy. And Sly Cooper almost gets to that point, except that it still has the live system, and it's not instantaneous reloading and all that jazz. So, I mean, there are a fair few complaints that I think you can make. I don't think it had the influence that something like Ratchet and Clank did.
Oh, definitely not. Or probably even Jak and Daxter.
Yeah, I mean, Jak and Daxter was pretty revolutionary. The first one, at least. The second one, I think, improved on it, but I think the second Jak and Daxter was fine. I think a lot of people remember it as being good because they played it when it was they were the right age for it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm trying to figure out, just on the spot, why this game didn't have as much influence on stuff, and maybe it's because it came after... Wait, did it come... Now I'm confused. Did it come before or after Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank?
So, the first Jak game came out in 2001, so it would have been after that.
Okay, and Ratchet and Clank came out in 2002.
So, right around the same time.
I think Sly Cooper was just slightly overshadowed by Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter at the time. But I think it must have made an impact, because it is one of the names that people remember from that time period, even competing with Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter, both.
Well, as we all know, I didn't really play video games back then, but even I knew what Sly Cooper was.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Like when the collection was announced, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that, and I was actually pretty excited to try it out, and I did. I liked all three of the games that were on it. I played through them all.
Nice.
You know, they're short, again, like you said, so it wasn't terribly hard, but yeah, pretty much in a few days I just played through all of them.
Nice. Yeah.
And they all had fairly easy platinum trophies, so that was nice.
Back when you were still getting them platinums.
Yeah, back when I cared about that.
Yeah, so I think while, like, especially when it came to future games that were made, I think Ratchet and Clank kind of reigns supreme over Jak and Daxter and Sly Cooper both. Mm-hmm. I think time kind of bears out that Sly Cooper is on par with Ratchet and Clank as a series. It's just that, you know, I think it came out in direct competition with Ratchet and Clank. At least the first one, and Ratchet and Clank kind of won out. But looking back on it, it didn't win out because Sly Cooper is bad. I think it just won out because Insomniac is I think better at marketing than Sucker Punch.
Yeah.
And B, I think Ratchet and Clank is just a slightly better game.
I think it's slightly better. I also think it was a little more interesting in as far as gameplay and plot and things like that. Just a little more unique. And I think one of the things that really made it stand apart were the weapons.
Yeah.
All those crazy, gadgets and guns that just did crazy oddball stuff. And, the voice acting in that is really well done also. Mm-hmm. But I think the writing is probably slightly better in Ratchet and Clank.
Well, yeah.
As opposed to Sly.
Well, and let's not forget that Insomniac Games had an opportunity to kind of refine their approach to games like this, because they also made Spyro the Dragon. So
so it was kind of their second go at
it. They'd had a few years to kind of figure things out. And I think Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, as a premier effort from Sucker Punch, is actually really fantastic.
Indeed.
It's just not quite on the same level as Ratchet and Clank. And I think I'm hoping that the movie manages to spur both the Ratchet and Clank movie and the Sly Cooper movie that's coming out next year. I hope both of those manage to kind of revitalize their respective franchises, because I'd love to see more Ratchet and Clank games, and I'd love to see more Sly Cooper games.
I
mean,
I didn't play the game that was based on the movie that was based on the game, Ratchet and Clank.
Me neither.
But I watched Daniel play it for a while at his house.
It's gorgeous,
and it seemed like it is gorgeous, and it seemed a lot like Ratchet and Clank. So I'm pretty sure I would enjoy it. And but I never have gotten around to it. But the same thing, I agree. I think if they could help boost the franchise, if the franchises even need boosting, I don't know, it would be a good thing.
Yeah. So, do you think that Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, do you think it's one of the best games, period?
I don't. I think it's a great game. It's a fun game. It's a cool game. It's a game that I thoroughly enjoyed. And it's not even so much that I think Ratchet is better, that I don't think it's a best games, period. I just don't feel like it's one of those, you could skip this game and still feel whole as a gamer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I also don't think it's a best game, period. I think it's one of those game series that's really great. And I definitely think that if our recommendation on Ratchet and Clank as a best game, period, manages to make you play through that series, then I think you should definitely look at Sly Cooper, because Sly Cooper is similar, but doing something different. And also, I think if you're looking for, a stealth game to introduce your children to, I think it's a great game for that. I think it's a good game for kids. And that being said, I think that it has a lot of those stipulations. It has too many of those. If you are looking for this, then you should play it. Whereas I feel like a best game, period, should be something that you can just say, you have to play this. You need to. It's part of your gaming education. As part of the canon of video games you need to experience before you die.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So, Jak, Extra Life, they're close to $9 million now, yeah?
Heck yeah. We broke $8.5 million for 2016. What?
Crazy. And people are still going strong. I still see people talking about they're doing their event this weekend or whatever. So.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet seeing this all kind of play out. And I like that it seems like 2016 people are getting more into the swing of holding their own event when they can, as opposed to just focusing solely on the main day, which this year was November 5th, and obviously is over and done with by the time you're listening to this. But for those of you who may not know, Extra Life is an event that happens every year. This year, was at the beginning of November. Sorry, you missed that day. But you can still get involved. You can still sign up and participate and hold your own little video game marathon and raise money for sick and injured kids in Children's Miracle Network hospitals all across the United States and Canada. And when you sign up, you get to choose which Children's Miracle Network hospital you want to support, and 100% of all the money you raise goes directly to that hospital to support sick and injured kids and their treatment. It's really, really great, and 100% of it goes to the kids. None of it is skimmed off the top for administrative fees or anything like that. It's tax deductible if you need that incentive, and it's a really, really great thing, and it's powered entirely by the gaming community. So if you want to go out there and live stream gaming for, maybe you can't do 24 hours, maybe you can do 4 hours. Maybe you can split that up over 6 days, if my math is correct. And just see what you can raise. If you can raise $100, that's fantastic.
Yep.
If everyone who signed up raised that much money, we would have so much more money. So just head on over to extra-life.org and you can find out more. There's a handy-dandy little fact sheet over there that you can look at. I was trying to say FAQ page, FAQ, but I said fact.
Yeah.
Either way, you can find what you're looking for. And you can also head over to the community side of things at community.extra-life.org, where you can connect with people all over the country, all over the United States and Canada, who are interested in doing more for Extra Life and really passionate about the organization and doing more for the kids. You can find people in your local community, bond with them, figure out, events or things you want to do together. It's really, really great. You can also find this very podcast over there. And honestly, it's, not to brag, you just listen to an episode. It's pretty fantastic. So
I would concur. You can find us in other places as well if for some reason your browser doesn't work for Extra Life, which it does, so just do it. But we put our episodes out every Monday, sometimes early, sometimes a little bit later.
Yep.
And you can find us on Libsyn or the community.extra-life.org page. We also are on iTunes, so you can subscribe, rate, leave a review, do all those wonderful things.
And please leave a review if you enjoy the show. It helps us get more visibility on iTunes, and that's always helpful.
Yeah, that's important. You can follow our show at Best Games Period on Twitter, so you always know when the freshest and cleanest episodes are up. And you can mosey on over to our YouTube channel if you like. There's not a ton of content there, but the stuff that's there is pretty great. Thanks to Jack. He does a wonderful job with that.
You can even find a handy-dandy updated playlist of all of the closing music that we use on this show, which, I put on today while I was cleaning, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Yeah, that's a fair amount of content now at this point, after 45 episodes.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I'm kind of sad Daniel isn't here because this is pretty much as close as we're going to get to our year anniversary of the show.
That's true.
Yeah. When people listening to this, it'll just about be our 1 year anniversary for the show. I think I said that last month and I was off by, a month.
It's anniversaries.
But
well, happy anniversary,
happy
Jack.
anniversary to you too, Jeremy.
And Daniel, even though you're not here, happy anniversary to you as well.
I bet he can feel it in his heart.
He can. He probably just got this warm feeling and he's like, I wonder what that's all about.
And hopefully it's not him having a heart attack. But
yes, that would be ideal.
That would not be ideal. So yeah, you can find us in all those places: SoundCloud, Libsyn, iTunes, all that good stuff. And just subscribe, comment, let us know what you think. We always love hearing what people think of the show, what people think of our picks. If people agree with our decisions, all that stuff. We love hearing from you. We love arguing with you. We love agreeing with you even more. So
we love it when you agree with us the
yes.
best.
Just leave us a little comment on any of those places, and we will see it. So,
indeed.
With that, I think it's time for us to flip out, right?
All right. Well, Jak, yes. Thanks for joining us. This was a pleasurable episode.
It was. I feel very... I'm not going to finish that sentence.
And we will see you all on the dippity flippity.
Oh, he reversed it.
Plot twist.